In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, this emergency episode, I must add, I'm going to share my thoughts on Cooper Flagg's dominant, record-breaking 42-point performance against Notre Dame. And the question is, was this the most dominant performance we've seen from an NBA prospect in college basketball this season? Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Big shout out to those that are listening on the weekend. Like I said, this is an emergency, totally unplanned podcast. I knew we were going to do a podcast on some of the top performances over the weekend, but I felt like Cooper Flagg's performance deserved its own individual episode. But before I get into this episode, I want to let you know that your favorite Locked On NBA podcast has a newsletter. Check it out, lockedondaily.com. It is the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox, lockedondaily.com. And if you are not subscribed to the Locked On NBA Big Board YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are coming at you 5 days a week at the very minimum. And I am a little bit biased, but I think we are your best source for NBA draft content, because like I said, we're coming at you 5 days a week. We have a team of me, my brother James, Leaf Tulane, Kristen Peak, Richard Stamen, all bringing multiple opinions and thoughts covering the NBA draft. And it's going to be an exciting NBA draft. This draft class, we knew the 2025 draft class was strong. We knew that it had all the right components to make it an exciting class to cover, even just from like a media standpoint. And Cooper Flagg's performance today, I mean, I guess it's an example of how good this class is. I mean, we've seen multiple strong performances from some of the top prospects in this class. And I feel like that's something that was missing from college basketball in the last couple of years. But let's get into Flagg's performance. Cooper Flagg had an absolute showing today against Notre Dame. It was one of the earlier games. It came on at 11 a.m. Central, and he had a record-breaking performance. 42 points. I believe it surpassed the freshman record of 35 by Zion Williamson. It was an ACC freshman scoring record. The first freshman at Duke to score 40 points in a game, and the first player to score 40 points since J.J. Redick. Shout out to J.J. Redick, or prayers to J.J. Redick and his family. I saw that he lost his home in the fires in L.A. I used to live in L.A., so it kind of touches me a little bit different just because I know the area. So prayers up to J.J. Redick and anyone that has been impacted by the fires in L.A. But back to basketball. This is the first 40-point game by a Dookie since J.J. Redick. And if you think about Duke's history, you think about all the lottery picks, you think about all the number one picks, for Cooper Flagg to set a record is something that, I mean, that's very impressive, just because it's Duke and their storied history. And of course, you know, just to be on brand, we got to say he just turned 18 a few weeks ago. I mean, how many times did you hear that on the broadcast today? But yes, Cooper Flagg just turned 18, barely eligible for this 2025 NBA draft, which I think it's very, very likely he is going to be the number one pick. I do think that Dylan Harper has a puncher's chance, but right now Cooper is like ascending in the right direction, and unfortunately Dylan Harper has been battling with the flu. But back to Cooper Flagg, 42 points, 11 of 14 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3. We'll get on that in a second. 4 of 6 from 3, got to the foul line 17 times, made 16 out of his 17 free throws. If my math is correct, he had 27 points in the second half, which is his second consecutive strong second half. I know against Pitt, I believe he had 14 points in the second half, only had 5 points in the first half. Flagg also added 6 rebounds, 7 assists, showing his versatility as more than a scorer. And we're talking about a guy who I have labeled as the best defensive prospect I've ever seen on the high school or the prep level. And the offense is catching up with his defense. So I want to talk a little bit about how he scored. It was the variety and the versatility in how he scored and impacted the game, which was impressive. And Duke needed all of his points. It wasn't like they blew Notre Dame out. There was at one point it looked like it. Notre Dame made a fight at the end, but they needed nearly all of his points to pull out this game. Flagg scored on movement threes. He had pull-up jumpers. He was quick and decisive with the ball. He scored in the mid-post. He had, of course, his typical one or two highlight reel athletic plays. There was one particular play where it looked like he took off from where it said ACC just inside the free throw line, took off and had a highlight reel dunk. He showed the passing, had excellent chemistry with Kamau Maliwauch, another guy that I think is going to be a lottery pick. Maliwauch had 19 points. So that was a strong performance there. And it was just the efficiency in how he scored, the diversity in how he scored, and the aggressiveness. Got to the foul line 17 times. Even if you take away all his buckets and just count his free throws, he still had a solid performance at 16 points. And again, this is Duke. This is not a school that doesn't have a storied history. And this has to rank as one of the best, if not the best, freshman performance in Duke's history. Think about, Jay Williams, Christian Laettner, to R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson, all the Kyrie Irving, even though it seemed like he only was there like a few games. But think about all the great players that have come out of Duke. And Cooper Flagg set a record today. And we still have a lot of time left in the season. And I think Cooper Flagg is trending in the absolute right direction. But I want to talk about the shooting. I want to talk about the three-point shooting. If there was a knock on Flagg earlier in the season, it was that he can't shoot. I see it in the YouTube comments. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. Yada, yada, yada. He is quieting those comments. He is 12 for 22 from three over his last 6 games, and he is 9 of 14 from three over his last 4 games. 3 or 4 games. Cooper Flagg is getting better. The jump shot is getting better. And he's not turning the ball over as much as he was earlier in the year when it just looked like he had one move, which was a hard drive, and then if you cut it off, he was spinning into traffic. He did that a couple of times against Pitt, but I thought this was, it's pretty simple. He set a record. But I thought this was his best performance, his most complete performance on the offensive end of the floor. All right, up next, we're going to talk about the 2025 NBA draft. Did Cooper Flagg just solidify himself as the number 1 pick? Some people believe it was already done before the season started, but did this performance stamp him as the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft? All right, this message is from our sponsor, which is Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting and wondering and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that can be a thing of the past. And you see, TurboTax is here to change the game. And the way TurboTax is going to change the game is they're going to match you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away, immediately. There's no more waiting for answers, no more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you got one form or 20 different forms, TurboTax experts give you and your taxes their undivided attention. They'll give you real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters, the NBA draft. No, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But you won't have to lift a finger. You get peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by pros. That's very important. Make sure you have a professional handle your taxes. So get ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed. Head over to TurboTax.com today. You can get matched with an expert who is ready to take the taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. All right, second segment, 2025 NBA draft. A draft class that I've been looking forward to. I think there's a lot of talent in this class. However, I will say this much. I do think that the 2025 NBA draft class has a lot of what I consider boom or bust potential prospects. I think there are a lot of players that if they hit, they can really, really take off. If not, I think that because they're so young, that there's a lot of guys that have the potential to really bust in a bad way. But again, let's talk about Cooper Flagg. My question is, with his performance today in the last few games, whether it's Virginia Tech, SMU, and Notre Dame, again, not powerhouses by any means, but still ACC play, the way that he's dominated, has Cooper Flagg widened the gap between him and Dylan Harper for the number one spot. Back in November when Harper had the back-to-back 30-point games, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of them was against Notre Dame also. I'm almost certain one of Dylan Harper's 30-point games was against Notre Dame. So basically, you can eat against Notre Dame's defense. Anyway, with that being said, has the gap widened? I think so. I mean, it's human nature. Dylan Harper scored like 6 points in his last couple games. I will say it has a lot to do with him having the flu, because the game before that against Columbia, he had a triple-double. But Flagg is putting on an absolute show. And is he widening the gap? I think so. But there were some that would tell you that there was never even a gap to begin with. But with Cooper Flagg shooting the way that he's been shooting the last few games, I think it's going to be nearly impossible for him to be passed up as the number one pick. Again, I mentioned it, 12 of 22 from 3 in his last 6 games, and that was the knock on him. The knock on Cooper Flagg was he can't shoot. He was missing jumpers. I want to say he was like 8 for 36 prior to this strong 6-game stretch. And if he continues to shoot the ball well, not only from 3, but on the pull-up jumpers, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey or anyone to pass Cooper Flagg, because not only is he making jumpers, they're not just standstill jumpers. He's shooting them off the dribble. He's making movement threes. I know he had a couple corner threes in the first half against Notre Dame, but there was another play where he got the ball at the top of the key, one dribble pull-up. He's making, like I said, shots on the move, mid-range pull-ups. And the signs of the progression as a shooter, especially as a movement shooter, were there at Montverde. And one of the things I want to talk about with Cooper Flagg is just how much he's improved as a shooter, not just this season, but just over the last few years. I mean, he has added so much to his game. He's only getting better as a ball handler. And I think that it's going to be, like I said, going to be very difficult for anyone to pass up Cooper Flagg. And one of the things that I like about Cooper Flagg's game that I think is going to translate well to the NBA is that he is just a matchup problem. You put a big on him, he can take him off the dribble. You put a big on him who doesn't want to defend out in space, Flagg is becoming a reliable shooter from 3. At least that's what this 6-game stretch is telling us. Then if you put a small on him, he is aggressive and he is looking to punish smaller defenders. There's a lot of bigs that I watch in today's game. They'll run a pick and roll. If they don't get the ball on the roll, then it's like a hard roll, then they just kind of die out. Well, Flagg, he's going to roll hard to the rim because he wants to get to his launching spot and take off and dunk. But if not, and he gets the mismatch, he is still going to post up, fight for low post position. And if he has a weaker defender on him, he's going right at him. He's going right through his chest. And it's either going to be a good shot, a bucket, or he's going to get fouled. And so I think there is a lot of room for him to grow on offense. But I think he's showing that he is polished, especially in the low post. I think he's a very gifted low post player. He does have plays where he's not able to muscle his way to the rim, or maybe he's not always able to blow by his defender. But what I like is that he has counter moves, but not only does he have counter moves, he is showing that he has soft touch finishes around the paint. He had a couple plays in this game where the first move wasn't there. He wasn't able to bully his way to a sweet spot. So he had to reverse pivot or come up with a counter move, and he was able to make some contested touch shots in the paint. And I think that is going to be very important for him, especially if he plays like the 4 in the NBA, which I think he is going to be a 4. But it doesn't matter. I think he's just going to be an absolute weapon. A guy that can play as the roll man. When you use him as the roll man, you can give him the ball in the middle of the floor. He can make the right reads. I call it like the Draymond Green play that he picked the Cavs apart with a few years back in the NBA Finals, where Draymond got the ball around the free throw line, and it was pretty much pick your poison. He was either going to make a floater, he was going to kick it out to the shooters in the corner, and if he had a lob threat at the dunker spot, he was able to find them. And that's what Flagg was doing today against Notre Dame. He was picking their defense apart, not only scoring, but he was picking them apart with his passing and his playmaking. So with that being said, it's probably like the 10th time I've said it, I think it's going to be very, very, very difficult for anyone to pass Cooper Flagg, especially if he keeps playing like this. And what we saw today against Notre Dame, again, record-breaking performance, but we saw the versatility from the passing to the shooting to the aggression, drawing fouls, to finishing at the rim, to the highlight reel athleticism. Absolute great performance from Cooper Flagg. All right, next segment, I just want to talk about some of the performances that we've seen from some of the top prospects in this draft class. And where does this rank? Stay tuned. All right, before we get into the last segment, I have a question for you, the listener. Has Rocket Money helped you find any subscriptions that you forgot about, that you forgot you were paying in 2024? If not, then you got to check out the app. You got to get Rocket Money, because you never know what they will find. Rocket Money has definitely helped me. I had a few subscriptions that I totally forgot that I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy for me to track them down. And it's like having a personal assistant for your finances, which is something that I need. And if you're wondering, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It helps you monitor your spending, and it helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And it does it all in one place. It's right there on the app. Whether it's subscriptions or tracking your spending habits, Rocket Money can help you accomplish your financial goals. Rocket Money has helped millions of users save a total of about $500 million in canceled subscriptions. And one of the best features for me is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services. I had like a car wash service that I wasn't using anymore, and I was able to save about $30 a month, which can add up. You can cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, last segment. Again, Cooper Flagg, 42 points. Not just 42 points. It was 42 points on crazy efficiency. 11 to 14 from the floor. 4 of 6 from 3. 16 to 17 from the floor. And he also chipped in. And I'm saying chipped in like it was minor. But chipped in 6 rebounds and 7 assists in Duke's win today against Notre Dame. So with that being said, and I want to kind of tie Cooper Flagg's performance into this 2025 NBA draft class. We've seen some really good performances from some of the top prospects. Now, one of the things I like and dislike about this class is I like the fact that it's a conversation over who's the number 1 pick or number 2 pick or number 3 pick. There are people that still believe long-term Ace Bailey is going to be the best player in this 2025 NBA draft class. They point to his athleticism, his size, the fact that he can shoot the ball, and he is not as physically developed as Dylan Harper or Cooper Flagg. There are people that believe that Dylan Harper is going to be the best player in this draft class because he's a point guard. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more. They see him as like the quarterback, the guy that can make things happen. And Harper has been phenomenal. Before this bout with the flu, he was pretty much at like 22, 5-5, and finishing 70% of his shots at the rim and making 36% of his threes. Now with Cooper Flagg, we know about the athleticism, the versatility, and so on. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that this is a strong class. Again, I do think there's a lot of boom and bust guys, But I kind of wish on like social media, people appreciated this class more as opposed to just taking sides. Like we see it in our YouTube comments. There are people that literally pick at every single flaw Cooper Flagg has. I don't know what you can say now because he's shooting the ball well. Then there are the people that love Cooper Flagg and they say, well, Ace Bailey can't shoot free throws. He can't dribble, can't use his left hand. They just pick at flaws. And even when a guy has a strong performance, it's nitpicking. Same with Dylan Harper. He can't do this, can't do that. I just want to talk about the fact that we've had some brilliant performances from some of our top freshmen. Ace Bailey, 39 points against Indiana. That was an awesome display. It was just about a week ago. An awesome display of elite shot making and just shows you a glimpse of what he's capable of. But you also know that he has a lot of room to develop and grow his game as a ball handler, as a passer for sure, because he doesn't pass the ball. Then you had Dylan Harper. He had the games around Thanksgiving where he had 35 points plus and was just relentless at getting to the rim, getting downhill, drawing fouls, and was just unstoppable in the paint. Then he started to shoot the ball well, especially off the catch. And you have a player that at his size, 6'5", 200-something pounds, that can get downhill, knock down shots, and create for others. You have a special talent there. And then you have Cooper Flagg, who, again, he's on a roll. He's leading Duke in pretty much almost every major statistical category, from points, rebounds, blocks, assists, steals. Again, let's appreciate this class and not be so divisive. But with Cooper Flagg, again, today's performance, I think, was the best scoring outburst and the best performance that we've seen from some of the top players in this draft class. When I think of monster games this year, I mean like absolute monster performances. Of course, Ryan Kalkbrenner's game where I think he was like 20 of 22 from the floor with 49 points to start the season. That comes to mind. Like I mentioned, Ace Bailey's game against Indiana, Dylan Harper's big game against Notre Dame, and then Flagg's 42-point game against Notre Dame. But my question for you, the listener, is out of all the performances from the freshmen that some consider tier 1 prospects, so that's Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and Ace Bailey, which monster performance did you think was the best? Was it Flagg's 42-point game, which is the highest scoring output of the three? Was it Flagg's 42-point game, along with the 6 rebounds and 7 assists? Was it Dylan Harper's display of just getting downhill, shedding defenders, and finishing in the paint? Or was it Ace Bailey's 39-point game without Dylan Harper, where he pretty much had to carry Rutgers, which, you know, one of the, I guess, I don't want to say it's a knock, but one of the truths about Rutgers is they're not a very talented team outside of their 2 freshmen. And Bailey had a game where he was by himself, and he literally gave it all he could. I mean, I think it was like 16 of 29 from the floor. And it was just an awesome display of shot making, tough shot making. Some say bad shots. But I thought that was a strong performance. And again, that was just a week ago. So let me know your thoughts. And I know there's probably going to be a recency bias. But what was the most dominant performance you've seen from an NBA prospect this season? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Well, that wraps up this episode. It was an emergency episode. Again, it wasn't planned. That wraps up this episode. Thank you for tuning in on a Saturday. Again, check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. This is Rafael Barlowe. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. I'm sure you'll be hearing from me in a few hours, but right now, I am